kindly in putting this together. I worked, just a quick background, I volunteered for a long time, and I worked with the Travellers of North Cork. I've made some very, very good friends, so I'll probably be never able to leave. I now on a voluntary basis in any way that I can do, and when I was asked to get involved with this, I just grabbed it with both hands, and I was so proud to be actually part of it. And I would like, as Bernard and we have thanked before, but without your participation, girls and few gentlemen, I wouldn't have been able to get such good findings and such passionate findings for this report. So thank you very much for all that. So I suppose we looked at this when we sat down for a day to look at it. We took it from the determinants of health, like all areas of life. I suppose are impacted. Impact your health basically, and that was quite evident in
Okay.
Next issue. Just take lovely, thanks from the way you live, the way you're educated, just every aspect of life. So we look first at public sector duty. What is public sector duty, and how it affects, we say, the traveller community in particular. And it was through this that we looked at the access address and report, and we went through the different strategy reports and to see how public sector engaged with the traveller community, and how the traveller community in turn were engaging with public sector. And I suppose one thing that did stand out to me was you're looking at public sector duty. Consider people who engage with them as customers or clients. So there is an obligation to engage in an anti-bias, and as you would everybody across the board. So Doug did a lot of work on, in fairness to him, he sat down and went through every single of the 14 reports, and to see where public sector duty was specifically mentioned the traveller community. And I suppose from that point of view, and Beck will probably be looking at that in the recommendations, is out of I think out of the 14 reports, was four reports specifically mentioned traveller community outside of the human rights. So one of the areas we looked in, and one area that I'm working with travellers myself that I would have been very engaged with and very aware of, was accommodation, and whereas how accommodation and traveller specific accommodation isn't understood, what exactly it is. Travellers are being pushed into areas that other people think that they should live in. I think Bernard went back, that's going back probably to 1963, the Act itself, that where travellers would have been considered an issue or a problem to be solved, basically. And I think that has come true in public sector maybe over the years, through no fault of its own. It's just kind of ingrained in the psyche of probably public sector duty. Now, of the 9 testimonial respondents, only one person had a positive response, unfortunately, with accommodation, and that had nothing to do with actual accommodation. It was they came out to fix potholes. Now that's very important to do, of course, because but that is the only positive response we had. The Cork County Council Equality Review, in respect of travel accommodation, noted that the Equality Review and the Travel Accommodation Programme made no reference to the public sector equality and human rights duty. And I must thank Cork County Council. They engaged extremely well with us for this report, and I had a fabulous interview with Maurice Manning, and he was very positive and very proactive us for going forward. We looked at education and employment again. Like the fact is that 80% of travellers over 18 cannot read or write, and I see myself children coming out of primary school not able to read or write. So, like in a time where literacy levels in Ireland are actually standing at 99%, there's something not, there's something not right there. If we look at the 80% not being able to read or write literacy levels, and we looked at the fact that 80% of travellers were unemployed, and there you see the correlation: education, employment. Educational disadvantage has been a major impact on travellers' access to employment. In findings, in research that we did through literary review on this report, we found that 83% of settled people said they will not employ a traveller. 43% travellers reported discrimination when trying to access a job, which is leading to a lot of younger travellers not identifying as travellers, because if they do, they're not able to get employment. And therefore, it's also leading to kind of education and interest in education, because if you're not going to be employed, why bother? And like that is something that we really need to address as well, and it's hopefully going forward. A teacher told me that traveller children are hard to teach because they have no interest. This is public sector duty coming through here. Some teachers are very good to us, inviting the parents into the school so we can explain the difficulties we have. So, like, there was in the education and in the engagement with the traveller community from the Department of Education, teachers, etc., there was positives and there were negatives. The negatives did outweigh the positives when it came to primary and secondary education, which is kind of alarming really. But when it came to third level education, it was all positive, especially from the ETB. All of the ladies here have gone in now and they've done their third level, and it's been all good. But that's not good enough if the literacy levels aren't there for younger traveller children, traveller teenagers, to be able to go on to college and to avail of that. So then of course we looked at health. Everything fed into health for us when we were looking at this report, and like it is a fact that like the traveller family, the traveller people live a lot up to 12 years less than settled community. Suicide rates are 7% higher, and that is at the lower end at this stage. And what's alarming is a lot of female ladies, traveller women, are now falling into that cohort, and that is that's something that hasn't been in the past. So, like, we're not blaming public sector duty, you can't do anything, that's not what we're doing, but we're saying that, to enable us to engage proactively, and for, to be more proactive than reactive is definitely going to help across the board from both sides, and hopefully will feed into the findings that we have here, and hopefully things would get better as we go forward. This was just a snapshot, as we say, and it would be very interesting to do it across the country for different traveller organisations to see if we could correlate the facts and the figures, and kind of get an overall, I suppose, feel for it. Access to justice was one that kind of I found kind of actually just the one thing for public sector, just looking at the health, is 99% of respondents in the report said had positive, all positive engagement with doctors, found them very, found them very engaging when services, health services, CAMs, all very engaging. They, the only thing that was of trouble was the waiting list, but that was acknowledged by the community that that's across the board. They don't, that's not just the traveller community, that's Ireland in general. I suppose a bit alarming when you think of disparities in health and how the engagement is so good, but yet the health of the traveller community is not so good. And again, that's something that should be highlighted from this report. Access to justice. Community guard was an area that all travellers again felt that they know their families, they engaged very positively, would have been of great help, going forward with them in situations. But the younger guards coming in to didn't know them and would have the participants in the research would have felt discrimination and from that aspect, and made a recommendation that, like as Bernard said, traveller culture awareness training is crucial for all members, new members coming into a public sector position, so that they have an understanding of community, what it is like for the traveller community, and get first hand the how they feel and how they feel they are treated by that sector of public sector, and that it was no one should. And now Thomas McCann, and he points out, and everybody agreed with this comment, that no one should make excuses for any traveller that breaks the law. Nobody makes excuses for anybody who breaks the law. But circumstances do alter cases, and that's very important to remember. It's living conditions, it is fear, it is discrimination, it is years of suffering from same discrimination year after year, and decade after decade, and I think that's what needs to be put across. It is ingrained in the traveller society. Is and like a lot of the participants said, like, it is a fear. It is a fear of the unknown. It is a fear of not it's a fear of being in trouble when you don't really know what is wrong, or not giving excuses when you ask why, or not giving answers. So I think that's something that should be looked into as well going forward. Like as it says there, that the younger guards who come to town do not know us, and they just look at us as trouble, whereas the community guards get to know the families and can be very helpful. And I know that myself from working on the ground with you, the community guards have always been great friends to us, and would have contacted us before we would even have to contact them in certain areas. So so I suppose that's what they're the areas of public sector that we looked at for this report. It is a snapshot, it's a small report, and again, I hope that people might get an understanding of what we're trying to do here, and hopefully go further with it in the future. So again, a heartfelt thanks to all participants, because it was, this is not my voice, I'm just a researcher. I just take it down. I do work within the community, so perhaps that is that might be a small bit of bias somewhere coming in there, but it is the voice of the community themselves, and I want to thank them very much for it, because without them it wouldn't have happened. And naturally to Beck and to Doug, my two compatriots. So thank you very much.